Kyle, so much pleasure having you here on The Secret Sauce.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here at GitHub Universe with you, Brian. It's been a minute. But yeah, super excited to be on the podcast.
Yeah. So can we start the stage and just introduce what you do at GitHub?
Sure.
Who are you?
Yeah, so my name's Kyle Daigle. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of GitHub.
Yeah.
I've been at GitHub for over 10 years. I joined as a developer and kind of switched to the business side halfway through to solve different problems. And so now my job is just to ensure that every hubber at GitHub is able to do their best work. And I also have the pleasure of being responsible for the GitHub Universe event itself.
Yeah.
And so I get to do a little bit of double duty this week.
Yeah, big fan of your work. You're actually part of the reason why I joined GitHub.
Sure.
I ran into you at a university years ago, and you're like, hey, you should work at GitHub. And I did. And but your come up's been amazing. Engineer to COO, like that's absolute mind blowing. Like for folks to be at a company for more than 10 years, but then also rise the ranks as well. So it's been you've seen everything at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen everything. I think, for me, I've always enjoyed software, but I've always thought of software as a way to like solve problems. Yeah. Like I'm not that like deep nerd that like loves the minutia of the comp sci ideas. I just like to build a thing and get it in the hands of people.
Yeah.
And so I sort of learned over the years that just by chasing hard problems and helping people, there's no shortage of those problems. And so, after doing it on the ecosystem side, I love people building on GitHub and doing, helping their customers or do their best work, that I could potentially switch sides, as it were, and take a risk, and make the jump and go and work on the business problems like mergers and acquisitions and take my technical know-how and then move into, well, how can a software mind help how IT systems work, and how we roll out the air quotes boring tools to the employees that make the biggest difference. Everyone's using email every day. Everyone's using Slack. Everyone's using Zoom or whatever tool you're using. A little tiny improvement there can make a huge difference. And those are the things that I've kind of been passionate about, and why I think I've been able to stay at GitHub for so long is I've gotten to solve different types of problems over those 10 years,
Yeah, and everyone's using email, but everyone's actually using GitHub.
Everyone's using GitHub.
So over 100 million users.
Yep.
But also, it seems like everyone's using Copilot at this point. Like, mind-blowing. It's, 1 million paid users?
Yep, 1 million paid users
now. I imagine
now.
The user base of just Copilot in general is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was only basically this time last year that we really announced it, right? And we shared it with the world, I think, 6 or 7 months before that. And now it's, 1 million paid users, 37,000 organizations. Just today, we were able to share, like a company like Accenture is now the biggest GitHub Copilot, your customer with 50,000 devs using Copilot. So everyone is using Copilot, I think, just because it's so valuable without any additional effort. Yeah. Like so many tools are like, this is really cool, but I have to now figure it out and put it in my flow. And as a dev, anything that breaks my flow just makes no sense. And so Copilot is a very quick and easy way to just have someone kind of finish your thoughts for you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, today we're talking about all the other ways Copilot can, help you out.
The Copilot for X, we got wind of that last year, and then we had announcements earlier this year, and now we get to see it actually in fruition. Where now GitHub.com now has natively Copilot built in, which is mind-blowing to that. Now what I can do as someone who was shipping code day-to-day for a while, now sort of running a company, I had to jump in and out. I don't know where the knowledge base is. And actually, the one thing that I'm really excited about is the knowledge base of Copilot being within my repository. Colin actually shared about this earlier. Previously, it still works on the search side of GitHub, and now integrated that makes so much sense.
Yeah, I mean, we can bring together, the unique tech that our search tech Blackbird provides, pair it with Copilot, and ultimately, let you go into any repo and just get a completely custom response back. And similar now, just a couple of weeks ago, I got pinged on an internal issue that said, hey, Kyle, you need to fix this repo that you built 10 years ago. And I was like, this ain't me. I'm not the guy for the job anymore.
People report to you for that.
Yeah. And so, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to go, hey, I'm a little lapsed. I write code on the side, but why don't I hop into the repo? And I mean, and with Copilot chat, I was able to do it. I was able to submit a PR, and people raised some eyebrows as to why, I would make that change. But doing that also just solely in a repo in GitHub.com is killer. Just to open up any repo and ask some questions and understand oh, what is this method actually doing and why is it built this way, can help people learn and then, do their work so much more quickly.
Yeah. So so I mentioned 100 million developers worldwide. I think GitHub, there's a lot of questions around who's a developer and what. And I think what I love about GitHub is like there's no question. It's like if you operate in GitHub, if you touch code, not even if you edit Markdown files,
100%.
like you're a developer.
100%. I mean, this is like I think the funniest thing is you'll talk to, reporters or investor relations folks, etc., or analysts, and the first kind of question is always, well, how do you define a developer? And I'm like, you go first.
Yeah.
Because how would you in this day and age define a developer? It's anyone that's touching code. If you want to solve a problem, you're touching a bit of code, suddenly you're a developer. And we're seeing so many more people come to the platform now because of AI. They don't even know. They want to just figure it out. They want to play. They want to touch it. And so, this year we had the highest number of first new commits because of AI. People are going in and playing with the repos and doing work. And so, I mean, everyone is kind of a developer at this point, or they're trying ideas that would make them be a developer. And so it's only going to go, basically through the roof as these tools are democratizing access to code. You don't have to be a comp sci major or even go to a boot camp if you don't want to. I really think you can go to a tutorial, and then you have a tutor that knows exactly what you're trying to do and try to help you learn that next step, that next language or that next tech.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever really been in an era that's been so helpful and personalized as we are right now.
Yeah. And what's the outlook on, so AI is now embedded into open source. GitHub now has AI embedded into GitHub. GitHub's the home for open source. What do you see the outlook of now, folks? The gap is closing. So what's the future of open source? How does this impact the future of open source and GitHub, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think that open source will have a new sort of gold rush moment, honestly, because it's so much more straightforward for someone like myself who doesn't have time to maintain a big project, but I can sit down and write something and get it out into the world, and then I can have other people that can come in and help me maintain that at air quotes 50% of the cost, you know what I mean? Because Copilot is helping them do that. If I don't need to monitor my security issues, I can just see it and go, Copilot already fixed it. It's going to bring more people to open source. I was at an event in my hometown. I live in rural Connecticut, so think houses spread out, not New York light. And it was a hackathon, and we don't have hackathons where I live. That's just not something you do. And so I went because I was like, oh, this is in my backyard. And what they were trying to solve was a healthcare access problem. It's not that people didn't have healthcare; they had health insurance, but they couldn't get to their appointments. And so the question was, how can we build an app that was open source that can help them get to their appointments? And the only reason that's really feasible now is because, well, I have all these tools and more people can be developers. The professionals don't have to spend 100% of the time. They're able to spend less time and do more. And so I think we're going to see all of these projects that just simply never would have existed because they didn't make sense in time or in financial terms or otherwise. And we'll be able to actually drive more change in the world with open source. It's not just for tech, but for everyone, for the world.
Yeah, I love this because now we're expanding knowledge and access, and I'm a big fan of expanding access and knowledge to folks who might not already have it. But hearing about this healthcare hackathon or this project to basically democratize that sort of information. I have a friend who's running underwriting for mortgages.
Okay.
Running just a startup to improve that situation because it's not equitable in all situations. So can you combine that knowledge graph? So I have a maybe off the wall question, but you're in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Based on your knowledge, what's the best pizza?
Frank Pepe's in New Haven. Full stop.
That was really quick. What makes it so good?
It's so crispy on the outside. It's a relatively thin pizza, which I really, really like. It's got the right ratio of cheese to sauce, but they just burn the edges. I'm a sucker for burnt edge pizza.
Okay.
And it's so good. Huge pie.
So is it Detroit style?
No, it's we'll get to that in a second because you said Connecticut. It's a very thin New York style pizza, I guess, ultimately. But let me tell you, I was thinking about you this week because we were in the office and we're rehearsing, for 2 weeks, basically, to get through GitHub Universe. And my favorite pizza here, now granted, I just visit, is Square Pie Guys.
Oh, I'm a big fan of Square Pie Guys.
So I said to the team, okay, listen, for after rehearsals, we're going to order 18 Square Pie Guys, and I'm going to introduce Square Pie Guys to everyone at GitHub. Sure enough, everyone's like, where's this? What pizza is this? I'm like, I don't even live here. I'm like, this is the best Detroit style pizza I've ever had. It's delicious and crispy and wonderful. So anyway, that's my West Coast choice.
Yes.
East Coast is Frank Pepe's for sure.
All right. Square Pie Guys is my number one choice, but unfortunately my wife's not a big fan.
Oh no.
So no. I have to order the personal pan.
Yeah.
And then like she'll just have a salad, and the kids will eat with me, but like she's just not a big fan.
Oh no. All right. Well, you figured it out.
Yeah. But yeah, we definitely need to do a pizza bite at Square Pie Guys in the future.
Yes.
But yeah, so GitHub has a lot of announcements happening. It seems like the company's evolving into this sort of new ecosystem platform. I know like it was in like the DevOps space with the actions a couple years ago.
Yep.
Now it's in the AI space. Now it's like how do you describe GitHub?
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, I think up through 2018, 2019, we were building a platform, but it was very tightly built on DevOps. It was all about connecting your code to your build, et cetera, et cetera. Now I think we really want to make sure you can go from idea to deployment. So that's like one thing, and that's what we now kind of consider the platform more than anything. Is if I'm writing code, I should be able to build it, I should be able to test it, I should be able to deploy it, I should make sure it's secure, et cetera. But once you add AI through all of that, like it's not a vertical, we're just like basically chopping GitHub horizontally in half and sticking AI through the whole thing. Suddenly the model doesn't like work exactly the same anymore, like when you are able to sort of do anything at any time by asking GitHub Copilot chat, in your browser or in your IDE, it lets you get so much more done. Like I'm looking at an issue and I can go in like staff previews and say, well, what is this actually trying to do? Versus having to read the whole thing. And why would they want to do that? And because we can feed so much more information, you can get past the sort of like AI summarization parlor trick, that everyone can kind of do, and really get down to intent. And so right now we're just sort of trying to bring AI to this GitHub platform. But we also shared like a sneak peek at GitHub Workspaces, which is sort of kind of saying like, well, if we just like flip a table and go, well, how should it be? What would that look like? And I think for us, the big thing is that we don't think that AI should ever take the developer out of the loop. It just doesn't work. We understand we want to solve hard problems. We know what the code looks like. We know what we want it to do. So we don't need something that can one shot or zero shot and just go from, okay, this is great to it's done. We want to have some control, and so with Workspace, the vision is that we can take any issue and basically get you running code.
Yeah.
And I've used it. I mean, it works. Like now, granted, just like you'd expect, there's places where you go, oh, that's not quite right. And in natural language, I can say, oh, don't make the window be horizontal, make it be vertical because the app didn't consider that or whatever, But I really think that's kind of the vision of the future of what we think software development is, which is humans saying how they want to solve a problem, defining the problem, and then continuously just being in the loop of, is this right? Is this the plan? I wrote a plan. Is this good? Okay, great. Does the visual look good? Great. Okay, let's build it. Versus having to think about it in an SDLC or a DevOps flow, which is now I'm in the build step. I don't think we're going to be thinking about it in a chunked environment anymore.
Yeah, and I saw in the announcements too as well, towards the end of the announcements, the partnerships. So there's a lot of partners who are now getting involved in the space. So can you explain a bit about how that's working out?
Yeah, so this is the thing I'm most personally excited about, which I'm really passionate about the idea that we need to bring more of the data and the systems and knowledge to devs while they're working. Like I hated when I was at GitHub, I have to deploy code and then I got to open up a dashboard over here and then I got to understand why the query is not performing in this other tool, et cetera, et cetera. And so we were working in those early days to bring all that data to GitHub and hopefully down to your IDE. But now with our Copilot partner program, we're essentially allowing our partners to extend Copilot chat and eventually other places within the GitHub experience so that while I'm working on something and I see a feature flag, I can just ask Launch Darkly. I can say, well, how many users are flagged into this? Because if I'm going to make a code change, like how many people am I about to impact? Or, you can look at a query that might look wrong, but you're like, sometimes in old code bases, it's like, there be dragons, don't ever touch this sort of thing, but you can just ask like, hey, how is this, query performing? And it's just while you're writing the code. And so it's amazing. Unlocking this killer experience, and there's so many partners that are on board. There's been so much excitement. We're still trying to figure out the exact best way to, interact, because we don't want it to be or I should say, I don't want it to be like, this uncanny valley where you're chatting with a bot and the bot's like, well, Kyle, I can't quite do it that way. Like, I think, as a developer, you know what you're asking and you want it to just work.
Yeah.
And so in this agents and skill structure, that's where we're sort of focusing as we bring these partners in, is making sure devs are getting the answers that they expect quickly.
Yeah.
But I couldn't be more excited about extensibility. I think that's going to be a huge win over the next couple months for devs to just have all the tools that they're using at their fingertips.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to, like, in the open source world, we get a bunch of new contributors in some of our side projects, and it's always in our API in particular, the setup, the tear down, the how do you set up your own environment, like all those questions always arise, and it changes as the sort of the platform evolves, at least what open source is building, and to have that knowledge base at the fingertips, but also bringing in perhaps some of these partner companies that we use, like I don't know if Datadog was a partner, I don't remember what was on there, but like, okay, if we can get people to get more insight within the repo and like chatting with Copilot, okay, cool. Datadog told us there's a problem here. Let's go circumvent over here in this line 23 or whatever.
Yeah, I think in the best case, right? Like, first it's like introspection. It's saying, hey, what's going on over here? But I think ultimately I just want to be writing code, and Datadog or Sentry or insert your tool of choice, right, just kind of tells me, well, this line anywhere else in your application is producing an error, and Copilot can just say, here's the better way to write that line without me even having to do anything. That's where AI is continuously in flow and being valuable, versus I don't want to introduce more steps in the AI era where it's like you do the work and then it's like, let's see what the AI thinks, and then it does all this stuff. In a perfect world, it's just in your IDE. It's in your it's in your brain as you're working. It's solving problems before you know you have them. And I think, with Copilot as it exists today, between Copilot and Copilot Chat, there's a really interesting stat that surprised the hell out of me, which was for PRs that are built using Copilot, builds are green 15% more.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, because everyone thinks, well, you're producing all this more code, so now you got to deal with more CI and so on. But the reality is that, like, because you're using this pair program, it's correcting problems as you go. You don't have to wait for a failed build to then fix that build and keep moving. And so, if you think about, that's just with air quotes vanilla Copilot, and Copilot Chat. But once you have all of your tools connected, you might be able to essentially one shot a PR, just like, boom, here it is, it's good, and get a review,
challenge accepted,
and be done. Exactly. And that's never really been feasible before.
We added CodeQL to our PR time using the action, because we were getting CodeQL updates after the fact, after merge, and like, oh, what's added at the PR. So now we're writing better code at PR, but now if I'm now open up VS Code and it's pinging me and like, hey, we know you think you're some cowboy coder, but this is a dark pattern. Let's not do this. Absolutely amazing. So I could not be more bullish about GitHub and the outlook for GitHub developers. Anything else you want to share as far as the outlook of GitHub?
No, I mean, I was just talking with a startup before I walked over here to chat with you, Brian, and like, they were sort of saying, it just feels like another era. Like, I really think it feels like when JavaScript became the language that everyone just used. The lingua franca moment of software development was when it was JavaScript. And there was a hype moment, and everyone did too much JavaScript, and then it came down, and then we're investing in the underlying technology. So it feels like right now we're in another one of those moments where this is going to be the thing we all use in some way, and we're in a moment where we can kind of figure out, well, what does that mean together? Like, we're providing tools, but it's always been the devs that use them that are telling us, okay, this is what the future is going to be. We're sort of just making sure you have everything you need. But I can't wait for the next, kind of 10 years. And if we chat next year at Universe, I imagine it's going to feel like 100%. It's been at least 3 or 4 years, in software time, just because of what we've been able to do with Copilot and all the devs on GitHub.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm looking forward to digging into all the stuff that was launched today.
Awesome.
I know stuff's going to be rolling out in the next few months. But Kyle, thanks for sitting down, chatting with us, and folks, stay saucy.